Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Creating beyond calculation, beyond politics, and beyond the big two. Welcome, Silverliners, to the wonderful world of Wednesday Wham. I'm your host, Dean Zachary, and boy, we got a skeleton crew tonight. We've got Rob Davis, the Paragon of Pencils, and we have Aaron the Contrarian Humphreys, also known as the Superior Skeptic. There's rumor that the Wizards of Wordplay will join us late, and possibly the enigmatic Brent Larson, author of Kalis. Tonight's subject, just to set the table, is costume and character. Which comes first? Why are they more important? Are they? Is it important to have a set costume or even street clothes, and the use of certain street clothes on certain characters important to keep relatively consistent as the character moves through a story? So I thought what we do tonight, just to get started, is spend a little time talking about legacy characters to sort of get a feel for what works, what doesn't work, and then move into some of the actual process that we've used for Silverline characters. Rob and I and Aaron, Aaron's designed his own characters, and I'm sure Silverline characters. Rob has designed Silverline characters. I've designed Silverline characters. So we want to take a look at the evolution of some of these designs, even looking at the finished ones, and talk about why we made the choices we made. And for aspiring creators out there, some of the best advice I can give you about designing a character, whether it's street clothes, whether it's an alien on another planet or what have you, or if you want to go spandex superhero, you want to not only make something as unique as possible, but you want it to strike a silhouette. If it's not, spandex, which would be just the human outline itself, you want to strike a silhouette that's even memorable in full shadow, so that your character can be recognized from a distance, if possible. I think one of the best examples of excellent superhero costume design would be Steve Ditko's original costume for Spider-Man, which is the most odd costume relating it to a spider. There's almost nothing other than the webbing reference, certainly not the colors, whether it was the red and black, the original, or the eventual red and blue, then the black, which became Venom, and so on. But just the oddness of that look, it's unforgettable. And that goes to say a lot about sometimes, just sometimes, without rhyme or reason, using the what I call the Todd McFarlane protocol of if it looks cool, do it, is sometimes the best approach. Thoughts and input, Aaron. I'm going to throw it to you to kind of get us going a little bit. Your
About
thoughts
the
on
Spider-Man costume?
Yeah, just so we get started with legacy stuff a little bit. What do you think of that? I mean, it really makes absolutely no sense with color or even construction, the way it looks, what parts are red, what parts are blue. You're kind of going, this has nothing to do with a spider. What in the world?
I always liked this black and white costume. That was my favorite. I
Mm-hmm.
never liked the
Yeah.
original costume. I didn't. I don't know. I don't know. There was something about. I don't know. It never struck me as a costume that I like, and I can't really know why. I don't know. They've done stuff where they've made the blue darker, almost black. Sometimes I think that
Yeah.
works, like black and red.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That was
I
the
thought-
original, actually, Aaron. The Ditko's
Mhm.
was
black.
red and black with blue highlights at times.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit darker. I have a couple of friends who like the black suit as well. I think the graphic nature of the black suit
Yeah.
is powerful. Vic says the redesigns of Cat and Mouse for the new
Yeah.
series really made them stand out. Thank you. That was my work. We're going to be covering that. A little
Yeah,
bit
he
later.
just bought brownie
Sure.
points, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. But that being said, there's something about the Spider-Man costume that was just, whether it was just odd or unique, but it stuck with me. Rob, what are your thoughts on the Spider-Man thing? Did it resonate with you when you first saw it?
The original black with the red. Yeah.
Okay.
That
and
was the one that
way,
yeah.
Yeah, and the way that Ditko used it, especially in night scenes where
Mhm.
only the red part would show in the shadow. Everything else was in shadow, so all you
Yeah.
would see was the gloves and the red part, the part that goes down the middle and the belt, and then
Sure.
of course the boots.
Right.
That all worked really visually well, and I think that's what it comes down to when you're designing a costume is like you said earlier, making sure that either the silhouette or some part of it, and I think those eye pieces on Spider-Man was really a brilliant piece of work. It's been copied several times. I mean, Deadpool's got some of that to
Yeah.
him, and there's a
Yeah.
if other characters that riff on that same thing. But
Mhm.
that, as far as I can tell, and I don't know that many Golden Age characters. I don't know if any of them had that or not. But when he came up with that, I think it was out of left field. Plus the fact that the mask covered his whole face. I mean,
Yeah.
it made sense that he was trying to disguise the fact he was a teenager and not a man.
Right.
But at the same time, when you're doing a comic book, you want expressiveness. You'll note in the movies every time they want the character to be expressive, the mask gets torn off or it gets pulled off for some reason,
Yeah.
so that the actor can emote, and that's the whole.
Well, they started doing it with his eyes, like the eyes transform and stuff.
Yeah, they'll change shape, and Ditko did the same thing.
Yeah.
Occasionally, he would put these black dots in the middle of,
Yeah.
of the
Oh,
white
yeah.
area in order to emphasize that he was shocked or whatever. So
I know,
he did a lot of
he
things like that with
He
it.
also did the squiggly lines for not only the spider sense, but for a sense of surprise and so
Right.
on.
Yeah.
Which arguably that was a convention of the medium beforehand, but it certainly makes it challenging for Spidey to emote in that mask.
Yes, exactly.
Dirk says, "Cool." Yes, it is cool that we're talking about this. This is one of those subjects
It's
that
the
I
cool
really,
factor. Yeah.
it is the cool factor. Anything you wanted to add to that, Aaron? You must have been just the right age when the Secret Wars and the black suit came along before it became
so.
Venom's suit, right? It was
Yeah.
just Spider-Man's suit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So, like I said, for some odd reason, I liked Wolverine's costume. That was my favorite. But
Mhm.
Spider-Man and stuff, I don't know why Spider-Man never did. Out of all the superheroes, you think as a kid I'd get into superheroes, but I was much more into very eclectic costume design.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
as a kid, I never quite understood why superheroes would wear tights. In other words, why would a person make a suit
Mhm.
that they wouldn't wear regularly?
Gotcha.
And so I always like suits that were like costumes that were made out of regular, like somebody just putting together different styles of clothing
Sure.
to make a
Sure.
costume. There's something because I never understood like even as a kid, like, well, I got superpowers, so now I must wear leotards. Like
Yeah,
I
that was
never
that
I
was a
never
that was
followed
a
that train of thought.
I want
That's
to
a
touch on that for a second. Vic
yeah.
says the superior Spider-Man costume was the best Spidey
Yeah.
suit for me. That is a creepy take on it. Obviously, that was when Doc Ock was taking the suit on it and acting as the superior Spider-Man. To touch on the reason for the tights, a lot of people ask, well, why would people wear it? What in the heck is that? Well, here's what the explanation scholars tell us, that in those days, the early days of superhero creation, we're talking about golden age now.
Yeah.
So you've got to think back 1938, 1939. The idea of an athletic performer was a circus performer. So you had the
Right,
circus
that's what I'm thinking. It
strongman.
goes back to the strongman tights of Superman.
Yes,
That's what I
right.
kind of figured. Yeah.
and that's why it started there, and so it was emulated in the decades that followed. And I think to some degree there's a level of traditional nostalgia, especially with the Superman suit. Even though they've tried to take the strongman briefs away from Superman many times, they keep sort of coming back.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me necessarily whether the briefs are there or not. I mean, they're on the bat suit too, and then they're taken away, and then they're put back. It's more how cool does it look? Because once you
Yeah.
start, like Aaron and I have covered this a lot in other broadcasts. Once you start going down the rabbit hole of this is ridiculous, it's not even practical, why would you even wear that? Then really everyone would just wear practical stuff, and we're dealing in a fantasy realm. So part of the conceit is, does it look cool? Because the Spawn suit. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, it's just
No,
ridiculous.
I never got the Spawn, especially when he was supposed to be like a horror icon and to have this the colors and stuff of the Spawn suit. I always thought like I don't know. There could have been some more interesting. It always seemed weird to me that
Mhm,
like
mhm,
especially I mean somebody wearing like tights in the street, okay, whatever. But
mhm.
why would the forces of hell give you a superhero suit?
Right. That
Like I never got that.
I
I'm like,
got it. I got it.
really?
I got it.
Um,
Here, this speaks to what you're talking about when we go to legacy character like Catwoman, for example. Catwoman's earlier look, arguably she was seen mostly just as a cat burglar. So there was the
right.
practical side. And then Jim Balent's take on her was a little bit more fantasy. Just the purple with claws and the teased hair coming out the back of the cowl and all that in the
Yeah.
90s. But then Darwin Cook did a great take on her outfit, where it really went back to the buckle and the zip up suit with goggles and her hair covered with the cowl. And
That I
that's
like that because it actually looked
yeah.
more like a thief, the cat burglar suit,
Yes.
which was
Yes.
what her
Right,
character
exactly.
reflected her
Yes.
character.
And I love when they use conceits of the comic book tradition, but then turn them into practical needs. For example, I like that she has claws on her gloves for climbing and so on, not
Right.
just because it's a cat costume, right? So, and there's precedent for that for those who are into martial arts and ninja. The ninja
Yeah.
had like a fixed claw that they put on their palm.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. The climbing claws.
Yeah.
They would,
climbing
Yeah, it has
claws.
a name. Yeah, but I can't remember
So
it
those
either. Yeah.
types of things can be adapted to something a little bit more realistic. There was another character. This one will crack you guys up. Actually, Wolverine has always been funny to me because you take a character like Wolverine, and it was created in the time Len Wein created him. It was created in a time when the fantasy bright colored suit was the vogue, and people still ask for that, Aaron. Believe it or not, I was talking to Rob off camera about that. That basically, when they want Wolverine, most people want the yellow suit
That's
with
why
the
I hate
cowl.
that suit.
And the brown, the brown is
Brown's
what
my favorite.
Yeah, the brown is the one I kind of came up liking the most. Vic says
Yeah.
if everyone wore practical clothing, we'd have a couple million characters dressed like the Punisher, and that's kind of just boring.
See,
Yeah,
strange enough, I disagree. I don't know. I disagree with that. So
Aaron's we're gonna touch on the Punisher since he brought up the Punisher, but I want to finish out with my Wolverine thought. The idea for Wolverine is again very much in the Todd McFarlane Spawn tradition of it just looks cool, right? The claws and the big ears and just this bizarre look. I mean, again, it's the X-Men, so we're already in more of a fantasy sci-fi realm. What was your take, Rob? I'm going to let you chime in a little bit on Wolvie. Having seen both of the incarnations, which one do you like? Which one do you think succeeds?
I can't go by the color because the color doesn't stick with me.
Okay.
The John Burns version of him, I think I like the best.
Okay.
And kind of what I wanted to cover is the fact that why capes? There's that whole joke in the
Batman's
movie,
the only one that
Incredibles.
made sense with the cape.
That's right. But the reason why capes, it's a storytelling device.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you can use that cape to show motion, to when someone's flying, you can show it flapping behind them.
Sure.
It's a lot of times the design of a costume has more to do with how it helps the storytelling and how it defines the character, even when they're tiny, when they're a tiny silhouette. That's Batman or whatever. That has a lot to do with it. It's a visual medium, so they went for something visual, and it Spawn makes in reality in the real world it makes no sense whatsoever. It wouldn't work. But on the comic book page as a cartoonish visual thing, it really works very, very well.
You were going to say, Aaron, what were you going to say?
Oh, I always liked that Spawn's cape was alive, that it was a moving entity. I did like that. I thought that was a cool idea.
I like that too.
And then the other
Doctor
reason
Strange's
for capes,
cape in the Strange movies is that it's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun.
I always got the sense that the cape was a sense of authority too, because if you look historically, most people that wore capes were kings, royalty. So I always thought that the cape was a sense of imposing authority or something over people as well. Batman maybe not as much, but Superman or whatever, cloaks, capes, things of that nature.
You look at probably a good example of that is Captain Marvel, and he's got the little short cape that goes off of his shoulder.
I never understood why it was so short.
Well, that goes back to acrobat folks. When they would come, before they would go up to the trapeze, they would come out and they would have a cape on. So
and then
they would walk out and they would flourish the cape and put it down and then dramatically climb and then do all that stuff.
Well, magicians
but that's
would do
what
the same
cape
thing.
is for. Exactly.
But they would actually incorporate
cloak.
the cape and cloak and the tricks as well.
Yes,
a way to hide hand movement and stuff. So there's lots of reasons.
That's where the doves are, and that's where the rabbits are.
Right, they're behind the cape to hide the trick or whatever.
Vic says, Aaron the Contrarian Humphreys, I expect him to disagree at least. Of course, that's what makes this show so awesome. As far as you hit on something there with the magic, Aaron, Captain Marvel was actually designed to be a magical version of Superman. Superman was the sci-fi story, and Captain Marvel was more. He derived his powers from magic, and of course, the magic word Shazam gave him his powers.
Yeah, it's a magic. It's essentially a magic spell.
A magic
right.
spell.
Right. To turn him into Captain Marvel.
But this is a little trivia you may not know, Aaron, and that is that Elvis Presley liked the Captain Marvel outfit so much he integrated some of his stage suits to mix in based on Captain Marvel.
And the high collar and the collar.
Wasn't Captain Marvel created by another company than acquired
Fawcett.
by DC? Yeah, then acquired by DC. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I thought so. I think I know Marvel made most of its characters in-house, but I know DC, a lot of their characters were acquired from other companies going under, and they bought the rights to them.
Sure.
That's why I always
Well-
thought like the DC characters work together, and then they don't work together because they are from different properties, kind of mushed together.
Well,
So-
starting off, Superman and Batman and some of the others were actually different companies that were
Yeah.
just lightly affiliated, and then they kind of brought them all in house.
Yeah.
And then characters were, comic book companies were going out of business, or
then they would
somebody
sell
wanted
the
to
rights,
cash
they'd
in,
buy
so
the
they would
rights
sell
instead.
them off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the Captain Marvel deal came because DC sued Fawcett over Captain Marvel because at one point he was selling better than Superman was. So DC sued him. I think it was still National Periodicals at that.
It was National. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was National.
That's kind. I don't know. That's
later
kind of
became
rude.
DC,
I mean,
but-
if somebody's doing well, it's like let's sue him. It's like give me a
Well,
break.
that's how
That's how
Disney.
people are,
That's
man.
Disney's
was
motto in
very
a nutshell.
it
People
was
get
very
jealous,
cutthroat, and
Darn
still,
it, they're doing
it
better
still
than
is
me.
to a
We'll
degree.
just buy them out. Tommy
Yeah.
says,
Man.
"Howdy, fellas. Howdy, Tommy.
Yeah.
How you doing, man? We're talking costumes and the costumes that Aaron wears when no one's looking.
That is
This
true.
is probably one of them. Wonder Woman.
Did you see
was
my Dean costume?
I know, man. It's awesome. I love it too. This guy, Harry George Peter, was 61 when he came up with the design for the superhero that William Marston created in
Wonder
1941. Wonder Woman. And
Her
she,
original name, I think, was Wandaria or Wanda or
Suprema, I believe.
Suprema. Was that okay?
Yeah.
She had a
Yeah.
different name than Wonder Woman. I know that.
Yeah. And basically, she had the Star Spangled look because patriotic heroes were in vogue at the time, but also it was a blend of the Amazon idea, right? So you kind of have the combination. It's interesting how, as her costume evolved, they integrated more and more of the Amazon armor and so on. So you have more of a gladiatorial warrior look, an ancient Greek look to her mixed in with the Star Spangled looks. Kind of interesting.
And there's been a lot of conjecture that William Marston's wives, and yes, I said wives. He was
Wives,
in
indeed.
polyamorous. Yeah, he was in a polyamorous relationship with William Marston in the 50s, which is very
Yeah,
very
that's
bizarre.
really a big deal. back
He
then.
had, I think he had kids by both wives.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, they were not legally married to both, but he did live with them both. They did say that that they think they were also responsible for somewhat of the creation of Wonder Woman too. I mean, what he was really into inventing or was fighting, the lie detector machine.
Oh
that's-
yeah, I had
So
read
that's
that.
where the rope
Yeah.
comes in.
That's
Yeah.
where the rope.
The
Yeah.
golden lasso.
The golden
Golden
lasso.
lasso,
He
that's
was an
right.
interesting guy. If you study him outside of Wonder Woman, he was just an interesting, like the ultimate progressive in the 50s, almost
Yeah.
like but yeah, he was responsible for helping design the lie detector and idea. Yeah, the lasso.
Well,
But again, coming from his preferences with the wives or whatever, a lot of people feel he had certain interests, and that's also why the rope and why
That's-
Wonder Woman was
yes,
tied
I
up a
have-
lot at the beginning.
I've read
So
that as well. I've read
Yeah.
that as well. We have some comments here. Pop says, "Hey yo, hey Pops." Vic says, "Then they buy." Talking about DC, I'm sure the amazing Charlton action heroes with my favorite character design of Ted Cord, Blue Beetle.
Blue Beetle was one of my favorite designs. I always liked, I will give tights or whatever, if it's a symbiote or mechanical costume or whatever. I think, the funny thing is when I go back to my characters, some of my favorite costume designs, I have to stop and think, were, I was always into more stuff. I like the look of the Predator.
Okay.
With, stuff like that. So I
very
was
simple,
more
yeah.
into designs that were not costume based. I like that. Strangely enough, a lot of the
They
military
were more
designs,
practical. You think that
A little
the
bit,
word-
yeah,
the word practical a little more in there.
Mhm.
Yeah. As a kid, I was really, like G.I. Joe. Like, strange enough, I have a figure of the Crimson Guard from
Mhm.
G.I. Joe. I don't know if you ever see and I really like the design of him and stuff, where they mix Cobra and basically a Marine uniform together, and it would, so there was more of a practicality. Some of my favorite costumes were the uniforms from the Alien Legion. As a kid, I loved those.
Yes.
Yeah. I like those too. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so there was a lot of stuff like that that was really like it was practical. It was also like they weren't wearing the costume uniquely, that it was more of a uniform or something connected to that. That's what invigorated me more as
Hmm.
like a costume or whatever. But like I love the look of the crow. And the crow again is I mean, whether you call it a costume or not, was just again street clothes put
It
together
was
with a specific
street
look.
clothes, a little bit more of I don't know, a heavy metal ghost
Yeah.
feel to it. But I appreciate that look as well. What was your take on, let's say, two things? First, we'll start with Punisher because you mentioned practical. To me, the Punisher outfit really is just basically a practical outfit, not in its original form, but as it evolved, with just the skull T-shirt.
That I actually like the Punisher when he it's like, look, again, I never got this. There are certain characters, especially specific characters, that you just think, why? I mean, wearing tights is okay, whatever. But there's certain characters like even I like Wolverine's costume. But even as growing up, I'm like, but this person in real life, like Wolverine, would be the last person to put on a leotard costume, just by his very
Hmm.
nature of a character.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's just,
he would mock it like he did in the
yeah,
movie.
in
Yeah,
the movie.
yeah, yeah.
Punisher is the same way, and so I've always
Sure,
liked it.
sure.
Like where he wears like black fatigue pants, and like you said, the T-shirt, and then he
Hmm.
has some sort of like gun holster harness or
Sure,
other. That
sure. Hmm.
seems like the Punisher way he would wear. Like he
Right,
wouldn't
right.
wear a leotard
No, no,
an
no.
outfit or whatever.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But
But
even
for
if he was to wear a costume, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no,
I
no.
think
Go ahead.
if you wear a skin tight, it wouldn't be for a costume. It would either be some sort of like military garb. Because I do know, and I've heard that sometimes people try to develop skin tight uniforms that can support muscle movement and stuff, that constricts
Hmm.
the body and stuff. So I can see the Punisher wearing a sort of muscle uniform that constricts and supports the body and stuff like that. So it would be a purpose to it, but it would look like a leotard
Yeah,
and I can see him doing that.
I could see him doing that as well. Now, a little further into the fantasy realm is Daredevil, which
Yeah.
started out. Bill Everett's first pass was more. It was more brownish. It was all kind of this gold, yellow, and reddish brown, and it had just
Yeah.
one D. And then Wally Wood took it and gave him the double D, the two Ds
Right.
on the chest. And then it went all red. And it was kind of interesting because if you watched what I still believe is the best TV adaptation of a street superhero I've seen,
Right.
was the Daredevil show. I thought they did a
Yeah.
pretty good job with
Mhm.
how that evolved, taking
Yeah.
the sort of Frank Miller beginning outfit and then slowly evolving into the more traditional
Yeah.
hornhead look. What did you think of that, Aaron? Did
I
you?
did.
Okay.
I really did like his costume in the
Yeah.
TV show, and again, it was practical. Again, I always thought, with Daredevil not being able to technically see himself, like, because I never gonna. Okay, so I'm not like knocking people blind.
Yeah.
Daredevil became blind. Was he born blind? I can't remember.
He became blind
He
in an
became
accident,
blind.
Okay,
right?
because I couldn't remember.
So
Because people who are born blind sometimes I have a hard time understanding the concept of color.
no,
Like they don't understand it.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
if he became blind, then he would understand the concept of color. Okay,
Yes.
because you sometimes
yes.
wonder like why would he wear red or yellow or anything if
Sure.
he's born
Sure.
blind? I
Sure.
mean, he wouldn't
Sure.
understand that
No,
concept.
no, no. It was an
Okay.
accident, and the
Um.
conceit of the story is that it enhanced all of his other senses to
Mhm.
the point where he has, of course, the superhuman, almost radar vision.
Can he
Where
see color
see.
in the radar sense? I can't
It's
remember.
can feel it.
arguable.
He can
He can
feel
feel
it.
it.
He can feel.
Okay.
He feels it with his fingers. Yeah. He
Okay.
feels colors.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, he knows
Which
what
is it's a hard concept to get, but yeah.
Yeah, it's. Well, I mean, it is. I mean, there are people that I can't. I can't remember the name of the condition, but there are people who, when they think of numbers, see numbers and colors, or they see colors, they think of numbers, or
Interesting.
Well,
Okay.
and people report having acid trips and actually seeing sound and music
color.
as colors.
yeah.
Yeah, so
It's called
it's
hyper. I don't know if anyone out there
Yeah.
watching this knows the word. It is the name of that. There is a name for that condition.
Okay.
right.
The bright red never made sense. Again, this also goes with Robin. Like there's always a part of me that always wondered if Robin was meant to draw fire from Batman because of wearing yellow. Because it's like, why would you wear yellow if you're trying to hide in the shadows? And Daredevil was a little bit like me. Like, why would you wear bright red if you're hiding in the shadows? Now, when they made it more maroon, dark red, that made more sense. Okay, that made more sense because it's a harder color to see.
If you look at Wally Wood's original design, it was mostly black with red highlights.
So it really was.
I think that's where it came from. Yeah,
it works better as a street fighting vigilante to have that crimson red. You know what I'm talking about here, and a much more deeper, darker red. And then, the conceit of it is, why the devil horns? Well, that's part of the concept.
Oh, yeah.
The concept of it.
I did love, I think Elektra took over as Daredevil or something.
Yes.
Her costume is I love her costume with the scarf and everything. That was cool. Daredevil always worked, like what Rob said, when it was more black and red, like Spider-Man. But the black and red really made sense for the whole devil concept.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Then we move on to something a little more high tech. In the sci-fi realm, Iron Man's suit has always been something enduring. It's too bad that the Empress of Inks is not here to talk about her favorite crush, Tony Stark, and Iron Man. But if you look at the original, he was almost just gray, and then he was gold, and then they made him red and gold. The story is that Stan Lee wanted something that would invoke a hot rod race car, and that's why they went red and gold with him. But it's interesting because you think to yourself, iron, I mean,
you wouldn't be able to move in it.
Yeah, But, and obviously, Adi Granov, a wonderful artist and designer, has done a very good job with updating the costume, making it more believable in the real world and live action. But I did always love how the original looked, sort of with the odd banding and the widow's peak on his head. Just it has a cool nostalgic look to it. It always felt like that the legs and arms were almost a movable metal, like a liquid metal or something.
I never Iron Man. Now the take that's very much for me. When I grew up and got into robots, I mean, I was into Voltron started out, and I was very much into Robotech, and then I was very much into the Robotech Cyclones, which with a motorcycle called Ride Armor too. I mean, I'm sure somebody here knows what they are.
Okay.
So there was very much this mecha design. Then I found Appleseed, and then so I was very much into Japanese mecha design. So when I finally came across Iron Man's armor, I was like, "What? What's that?" Like, it didn't make any sense. I'm like, "This is stupid." So it was gone. So that was where I came from when I came into it, because I was always into like, well, how could you actually do
that move?
Armor
how would you,
or whatever?
Right.
And it never. And I never to this day have ever understood why Marvel,
well,
and it's
Steve
Marvel
Ditko's
mostly
the one who created that in an issue of Iron Man, and it was essentially, it collapsed down into that attaché case.
Yeah, like in the second movie.
It was a very thin mesh.
Was like Kevlar? Was that?
That's what I always assumed it probably was. Instead
mesh.
of iron, it was a mesh or something that he could wear.
Right, and he would put the boots down and step into them, and then that would activate the magnetism, and it would pull it up and build a magnetic field around it, which is part of what made it still armor, even though it was just a mesh. It would still deflect bullets that way.
Chromathesia, that's the name of the condition.
Chromathesia.
Of course, the reason they did it was it made a cooler image. It's more interesting to draw.
Yeah.
So
Royal Airship says red is the lowest on the visible spectrum. It doesn't show well in
Strange
dark.
enough, he's right. Even in bright red, actually, if you show bright red in the dark, it does not. It actually absorbs more light than reflects.
I discovered this doing logo design. If you do a black background, don't put red over it. You can't read it.
You can't see it.
You cannot, unless you want to put a thick enough white outline around it to make it stand out. Do not put red on black. It disappears.
Good
so
yeah. It is strange. Yeah, it does. Iron Man never. And I also never understood why superhero Marvel's the worst cases would give robots muscles. They've stopped doing that a few years ago. But
Mhm.
even like the Sentinels, like why would the Sentinels have human muscles like the X-Men?
Sure.
Like I never
They would be more
Iron Man made
skeletal.
sense as a guy in a
Yeah. Yeah, they would be more skeletal, almost like the Terminator skeletons, that
or
kind of
something
approach.
like that.
Yeah.
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 But I mean, again, it was that superhero motive. Iron Man over the years has had some more interesting suits. I think the ones in the movies are pretty well done.
Yeah,
I mean, again, the movie they couldn't do. I mean, they had to figure out like segmented armor.
sure, of course. Yeah.
So I thought they did a good job of updating and design. I actually did like the Iron Man armor in the first movie and the few movies that came. I have one of them from the movie. A figure, one of the Iron Man figures, because I like the armor.
Yeah.
So I think the movies have done a good job. I'm not a big fan of the whole nanotech stuff. I don't know.
Yeah,
I like
it's a little
the
too
first
magical.
movie where it was
Yeah.
still he had the
Yeah.
there were pieces he had to put on.
Sure.
I thought that was
Sure.
cool, but by the end of the Avengers, like it's nano. I'm like, okay, that's stupid.
No,
I never liked that. So
nanotech is a little too magical for me.
it's even now. I mean, yes, we do
Yeah.
have nanotechnology. Yes, it really
Yeah.
exists and all that, but it's nowhere. I mean, no, it's
Yeah.
And again, like you said, if he had the ability to do that technology, even at a rudimentary level, he could change the world in so many
Oh, I know. It would just be great. Which
Yeah.
brings me. This is an analogous subject that we're talking about. Iron Man's armor, and you like the fact that it had segments, it had pieces that would break. You had to put them back on. It's interesting. Chris Nolan's approach to the Batman suit, right? Again, is closer to an Iron Man idea.
Yes, I love the way he designed the bat suit. The
Yes.
whole
Yes.
practicality. I love the fact that he made the cape, even though it's realistic. The fact it's a hang glider
Sure.
and stuff.
Sure.
There was something I like the fact that the whole suit. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
but
no.
The
Go
whole
ahead.
suit
Go ahead.
in that show was built for practice. Like the ears. Like why would he have ears? It's like, well, that's the house that we can hear. Like it, he can almost radar hearing with that. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I mean, that the whole suit is an
Yes.
actual device to do his
Yes.
job. I'm like,
Indeed.
that was probably the
Yes.
coolest idea I've seen. And now he built that over time to do all
Yeah.
these things. I love the Christopher Nolan Batman.
Yeah.
I thought that
Yes.
was just awesome.
I thought it was awesome as well. I thought the practicality of that. I have an affection for the old spandex one because I grew up reading that, but seeing how Nolan said, okay, we're going to make this as if it would take place in the real world,
Yes.
which has its pros and cons, but it was awesome to see somebody just really push as hard as they could to make Batman and the Batmobile work in the real world. And I give
And
him
the real world, and why he
Yeah.
would do this.
and
The
why
fact,
he would do these. Yeah.
instead of like they couldn't, because again they couldn't do the swinging from like Batman usually does ropes, and like
Yeah,
that wasn't really working. But the hang glider thing was, and the base jumping was something that was just like that, just a perfect evolution of that
Yes.
idea. And just like the whole, like, why would he wear? Because again, the capes, like most people, if you're a martial artist, the last thing you want to wear is a cape.
Yeah.
Because it just gets in your way. So why would you wear it? But the fact that they made it because of the jumping, I'm like, okay, that makes sense why he would try to learn to fight around it. Because it's a liability, it gets in the way of your fists and stuff. It's extra weight, especially if you're trying to balance yourself as a fighter. You have to worry about the weight of this cape and all that.
Sure.
So it's a nightmare. So it always never made sense as a martial artist Batman to wear a cloak.
Right.
Like,
Right.
but
right.
in the movie, it made sense.
Right.
And I love the way they even showed it in the movie when he tried to jump from rooftop to rooftop, and like he hurt himself that one time trying to jump, barely made it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, can I get like he would encounter a problem, and then like, okay, I need to solve this and go to that R&D thing. And the fact that most of the stuff that he would get were military prototypes his company had developed, which again was genius.
Again,
like there was so much good
Great
writing in that
idea.
series.
Good way to do that. Good way to do that. We want to jump over into the X-Men world for a moment here because we are talking about the costumes that are just completely outlandish. Back in the 70s, we're talking about the Phoenix, right? We wanted to. They wanted to improve Marvel Girl and really make her a more powerful character. So Jean Grey becomes the Phoenix. And there's a famous artist named Dave Cockrum that Rob, I know, is aware of, who gave her a sash. I don't know if you remember if you look at the sash. It's really nice. I mean, just aesthetically, it's beautiful. I mean, literally, these costumes for the Phoenix were Dark Phoenix or Phoenix, no matter what. Even Warbird. I know people have problems with the Warbird costumes. Oh, that's just so. I always liked it.
Warbird.
I
Let me
always liked
think of
Again,
the
it's a
Warbird.
cool factor. It's
It's
a
the
cool
cool
factor.
factor. Yeah, bring up Warbird and take a look before she became, Captain Marvel or Miss Marvel. It was Miss Marvel, I think, at the time. So they were calling her, but they also called her Warbird. But she had a cool
Yeah.
costume that was Cockrum-esque with the sashes and stuff. But again, there was something charming about the hair back then too. The female characters, the women's hair would be this almost alive. It would
Yeah.
flow, and they could use it the way we would draw capes. It would always be blowing in the wind for some reason. Rob, what was your take when you first saw the redesign of Marvel Girl as Phoenix? Were you a fan?
I thought, what a cool look.
Yeah,
Cochran
Same here.
could design some great costumes, and again, it's part of the era in which they were created. That's the kind of stuff that was, I think, in fashion at the time, that sashes were kind of in. So that's why it was incorporated in. Definitely, if you look at the women's fashion of the time, that sort of thing was, and big hair. So
the big hair
starting in the 70s, early 70s into the disco era. There was a lot of big hair, and it stuck around through the 80s, which is really, and got even weirder, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it got even more permy. It went from waves to just perm.
Yeah.
It was like,
and it was
Oh
like
yeah,
helmet,
the perms and stuff.
and it was like helmet hair.
Yeah,
it
really
did
got
not move.
crazy.
So, but
There was the Phoenix ones. I did like her. Marvel Girl, again. I always feel bad for somebody who's like, design a costume. What's their power? Telepathy.
Yeah,
Okay. Because it's like, well, how you design that in a costume? There's no. As she was telekinetic and telepathic.
She wouldn't even wear a costume.
You don't.
Somebody that has that sort of power.
if you went no
it
one
would be might be maybe a uniform.
Yeah,
which is, the X-Men costumes were a uniform to start with.
So
that made sense, but it didn't work in the comic book medium where the storytelling, and it kind of it wasn't form fitting like the later Lycra looking stuff was. It was kind of baggy. It was more like the Fantastic Four. So I think they wanted to accentuate her femininity. So that's why they went for something that it's either more form fitting, or it's got a little skirt, or it has a little sash, to make it a little more feminine. So it's there's more to it than just what's cool. Even it's what are you trying to say? With
there are a lot of visual cues. I would say that creating a costume incorporates more than just one component. Like, we're not just talking about just practicality or just the cool factor. A balanced costume should probably include all those components: practicality, a cool factor, a relationship, visual cue that sort of implies the power of the character. Vic says, I have a weirder perspective on this given my age because I'm more acquainted to the Phoenix, so I'm not crazy on the original Marvel Girl. A lot of people weren't as crazy on the original Marvel Girl, but Cockrum also brought another enduring fantasy character into the X-Men, and that's Nightcrawler. What do you guys think of Nightcrawler's
I always
look?
like Night, and they've never really changed. You never really had to change his Nightcrawler is one of my favorites. And I will always, I like the X-Men movies, but they kind of killed his character. They took away his humor. The fact that he was this Errol Flynn sort of guy.
He's a swashbuckler.
And they made him kind of this dull, like very religious, quiet. And I'm like, he's completely
not
opposite.
like that.
No, he's not.
He's more of a swashbuckler.
Which made him so much fun in the comics. And so I was I understand they couldn't do the human fur. Okay, I get that. He's supposed to be covered in fur. He's furry. So I understand they couldn't do that in the movie. So I get that. But it was just demeanor. I was like, man,
it would have been cooler to have him quip like RDJ, a little bit more suave.
It's funny how a lot of the characters they have quipping in the movies are the characters that actually don't quip in the comics. And like Nightcrawler's the one who's supposed to be quippy, and he doesn't.
I'm
like, well...
Yeah.
So I'm like,
I know.
yeah, I was kind of bummed because I was super excited to see him. I was a big fan of Colossus, and the only one that got Colossus right was the Deadpool movies, but they made him
Yeah.
kind of a goof instead of
Yeah.
but visually they got the look of him right.
They got the look right. Yeah.
But
What do you think of the
Nightcrawler's
Nightcrawler
has
costume?
never had to really change.
No, you don't just have to. Rob, what about you and Nightcrawler's costume? I think again we have many of the components that I mentioned earlier represented, because you've got the fact that he's, a swashbuckler / circus performer. He has sort of a devilish, devil may care attitude and feel, and that's reflected in the costume as well.
Yeah, I think that's an ideal piece of creative costuming there. And it also and it kind of fed into the character as well. If you stop and I remember one dialogue or monologue that he had one time talking about how when he first turned, how people were turned off by him and scared by him. And I think that's the aspect that they were trying to bring out in the movies that I think they shouldn't have, is that side of him is the very sensitive and religious side, because there was that side of him in the comics, but there was also the fun-loving.
There was the fun-loving swashbuckler.
Once
became
he became
a
superhero, then that part of him came out.
Yeah.
So so that was the fun part of him. But I think I think you're right. I think they emphasized the wrong aspect of the character in the movies. Definitely.
Yeah.
Vic agrees. He says the movie's got it wrong.
Yes.
Nightcrawler's religious, but he's also a goofball. He used to work in a circus.
Exactly.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was on the street from a run, like somebody ran him out of the circus, and I think that's where Xavier found him.
Right.
But I think he was actually being chased by a German village who thought he was a demon, and Xavier interceded and saved him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe that is part of his origin story.
Right. He's always been one of my favorite Nightcrawler, and the fact they took away his sword in the movies, and not once that they didn't have him use his Errol Flynn sword. I'm like, come on, man,
come on, guys.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, to me, a Nightcrawler one shot, like how they did Werewolf by Night, a short little hour-long thing. Do a Nightcrawler thing, man. How cool would that be, man?
Disney's redoing the X-Men, so hopefully, if they do Nightcrawler, they can get him right, because his character completely fits the whole Disney Marvel style of quip and everything. Nightcrawler is that character, because the one person I know they're going to start having Wolverine do quips, and that's just going to kill it.
He doesn't. He says like things like "bub," and he should be smoking a cigar. I'm sorry, but he should smoke. That's just Wolverine.
Well, and the thing is there were people that realize he drinks or smokes because it doesn't actually affect.
It doesn't do anything to him.
So he does. Right? So that's why.
Vic says the X-Men Evolution cartoon got the best appearance of Nightcrawler. Yeah,
they did a really good job of Nightcrawler in that cartoon. That was a really well done.
One of the challenges of taking legacy characters that have been around longer than, let's say, 6 or 7 decades is that the era in which they were conceived tend to make them feel outdated, corny, not really fitting into today's society. We've talked before on the broadcast about the challenge of bringing Captain America up to date. The costume itself made sense when he was conceived, and certainly in the 40s, that idea of a star-spangled super soldier totally made sense.
World War II made sense.
Sure. And now it's a little bit different because we're in this post-millennial, and even in the 90s, there was this idea that, nationalism bad, blah, blah. So, but it's interesting to me visually how even with the updates, I think Adi Granov had a little bit to do with the realism of the Cap suit in the movies as well. Yeah. But they kept the core look and then managed to use the conceit of him resisting but agreeing to doing a stage show during the war where he put on a Captain America suit, and he hated it and thought it was silly, but then sort of used that to continue as his uniform. What did you think of Captain? I'm going to go Rob first here with this. What did you think of Cap? The evolution of the suit, the fact that no matter how much they try to update and adjust, really what you have there is a nice balance of components. You have the implied message along with the practicality of the shield and the chainmail that he's wearing.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I don't think the chainmail has been played up as much as it should have been.
I know, which is kind of a bummer.
It was too shorthanded in especially early on, that you couldn't tell that was chainmail.
Right.
Or even
There's some,
it would even make sense as even like small scale mail.
Yes.
You know, like
there's some
like,
artists that have
like
really
fish.
emphasized it, and it looks
Yes.
a
Yeah.
little bit most do
Some
not.
artists
Most do
did
not.
it better than others, but yeah, I but other than that, I think for in a lot of ways it works really well. The only
Right.
part that's kind of silly is the underwear trunks on in
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
But
A
I
holdover.
like that look, but at the same time, it looks kind of silly.
yeah, it
So
does
the
now.
costume that they came up with after Cap, where he grabs the helmet and he runs off to rescue the guys. After that, then it kind of starts to make sense, because
Here's where
he's
you're born.
playing off the character he was playing in
Yes.
the movies that he was in.
Yes.
So
Yes.
plus wearing that, it's good propaganda on the other side. When the other side sees Captain America coming at him, they're going, "Oh crap, here he comes!"
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
So he
yeah.
had to. So it makes sense that he
It does.
would tie in that somehow.
Yeah.
So it was very well done, I thought.
I thought so,
Especially
too.
like the fact that when they first did the cowl,
Mhm.
I'm going, how are they going to take care of the wings on the
The
side?
little wings and stuff. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
went, oh, then just paint it on the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. They'll
And
just
then
make it, yeah.
to make
Sure.
it even work, is the original costume had the really silly wings on the
Sure.
side, and
Sure.
they made fun of that. And then he goes, but that's part of the look, so let's put it on side and
Let's put it on the side.
paint
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
helmet. So it
Kind of like a
it
racing
just
helmet,
it just
motorcycle
worked.
racing. Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree. Aaron, what do you think? You think it endures pretty well in terms of the adaptation in
I
the
think
film?
Yeah. I think Captain America, I always liked his costume because there was this medieval slant to it. The boots,
Right.
the chainmail, it
Mhm.
was, more like an American version of like a medieval knight protecting
Yes.
American freedom.
Right.
Yeah,
Which
there's
I
some of
thought
that
was
to
an
it, yeah.
interesting take. I mean, the shield, he just got rid of the sword.
Yeah.
And in World War II, I always did like Captain America when he had more of a handgun with the shield. I know like they can't really do guns and but that always made sense. Paint on the side of the wings. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah.
And so I thought Captain America is goofy enough that you have to kind of lean in the fact that this guy represents an American, like a flag. He's
A
literally
flag,
a walking
sure.
flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I never quite. I mean, the original shield was literally a medieval shield, and then later it turned into the round shield. I do find it interesting that the guy literally fights with a big frisbee. So I give him props for that. I
kinda
never
cool.
quite. It is kind of cool. It's different.
It is the unique nature of it. I think
His character is very different. Yeah.
you know how you and I just talked about the Nolan verse approach to Batman. I thought that in Winter Soldier, in Cap 2,
Yeah.
the way Cap fights in that film, really, they went Nolan with that in terms of, how, especially in the elevator, where he's telling everybody,
Great.
does anybody want to get out?
Best
Yeah,
Captain
before
America scene.
Best Cap
bar
scene
none.
I've ever seen
Just,
in film.
Does anybody want to get off?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man,
It's not going to end
before
well
we
for you
begin.
guys.
this is going to be brutal. And to me, that was the most Nolan take on Cap that I've seen, and I'd love to see more of that. I think universally, the fans I've spoken with at cons and other places have always said, Cap 2 defined Cap for the movies for me, and I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I liked my favorite Captain America movie. Still, strangely enough, was the first one. I've always liked
Okay.
Captain
Yeah.
America in World War II.
I love that first one. It was Cap. That was Cap.
Yeah,
That was
that
Captain
was my
America.
favorite. Winter Soldier, I liked it.
Yeah.
And then Captain America is my favorite superhero. So by the time they came out with the third movie, and I'm watching the movie, I'm like, "Where's Captain America? Where is he over there? Where
Is he over there? Where is he? Yeah.
Because and so the third Captain America movie was almost like too much of a snafu to me. To like, well, it's like, okay, just
It
not
was
even
an
to get the
Avengers.
guys to do. Yeah,
It was
and
an
so I was
Avengers
like,
movie, really.
yeah. So
You
I
know,
did
when you
not
get down to it.
get into that as well. I'd like Captain America was always my favorite because he was unique, different, and I really liked the Man at a Time, which they kind of played up in the movies in a humorous way. But I also liked that when they played it serious. So some of the comics they would play it serious, that he really was this sort of, he couldn't really grasp. He had very old school values.
Sure.
And he couldn't really grasp the sort of evolution of sort of liberal values. And I always thought that was interesting. Take on that. So I always, sort of like the responsibility. He's definitely an interesting character. And again, I thought it was, a little weird that he would fight with the shield. But then again, when they made Falcon the Captain America, and that's like, now he's got a shield and wings, that's even more bizarre.
That's even
so
more.
what is going on? I actually did like the Falcon as Captain America. But again, it's like, well, this is a weirder sort of weapon combination thing, whatever I've seen.
Yeah.
So I did like Captain America. He's my favorite. And kind of when he left the whole movie series, and I only really liked the movies with him in it. I didn't like a lot of the other movies that when they didn't have Captain America, I never cared. So I'm like, if they had Captain America, I cared. That's the only way it worked.
And
Aaron,
what really gets me is all the people that didn't think Chris Evans could pull it off.
Oh yeah, he did a great job.
After having done Johnny Storm, they thought, well,
he did a great
no
job.
actor is one note. No good actor is one note. I said, just wait, you'll see this guy.
You'll see.
And he was perfect.
Yeah, he nailed it.
He
nailed it.
He nailed
Steve
Rogers.
Oh,
he nailed Steve Rogers.
Well, what you
got
to remember
Captain
about
America.
Steve, I remember we had this discussion with Barb one night that Steve is very much closer in emotional health to Peter Parker than he is to Tony Stark. I mean, Steve is really this kind of innocent who wants to be like the heroes that he worshipped in World War II. But he couldn't do it because he physically was unfit to be able to do that. So, much like Peter Parker being this sort of teen that all of a sudden, he's the nerd that gets beat up. Steve was the nerd that got beat up too. So, in the comics, they've explored a little bit more that Steve and Peter Parker would be closer friends than you might think because they're both innocent. They both have innocence.
They would understand each other. Yeah.
Yeah, they understand each other quite well.
I did like that Captain America was supposed to be this and in the movies they did portray. There were some movies where they did that. The movies got better over time at sort of unleashing Captain America and showing why this guy is such a threat. Because when you first see him, it's like out of Iron Man, and why would this guy be like the ultimate threat? And in the comics, like all those guys are nothing. I mean, Captain America goes like he's the ultimate threat.
Yeah.
And so there were some scenes in the movies, like with the elevator and stuff, where you kind of see like why this guy is such a powerhouse, even though he's just a dude with a shield who's strong.
Yeah.
So they kind of got it, but there were parts where they didn't, and that was kind of like, I was always waiting. Same thing with Wolverine. Like when I was watching the X-Men, like were we going to see Wolverine's like just cut loose? And that was in the Logan movie. When you finally see why this guy is so lethal, especially the very first scene when they're robbing his tires, and the guy's just, and then he just goes ballistic, and I'm like, that's why he is lethal.
Wolvie.
He just loses it.
It does. Another patriotic superhero that's had some cool design is the Shield. There was the 80s Red Circle and DC Impact Comics version, the modern Archie. Yes, agreed. I think the most important thing about Cap for me was that his heart resonates with people when you see him jump on that grenade in the first movie, and you go, okay, that's why he's the guy, because everybody else is running away and he jumps to protect everyone. And so that's the guy you want to give the power to, because he is the selfless guy. You know,
My two favorite superheroes are obviously Wonder Woman, as you've always seen her in the back when I do the shows.
Sure.
And Captain America. Those
Yeah.
are my two. Those are the ones. The other ones, they're okay, I can take a leave. But Wonder Woman too, and again, Wonder Woman to me was always the idea, because I liked the one that she wasn't a superhero. One, she's an ambassador, which I thought was fascinating, even in the books. And also the fact, like, I always liked her when she's fighting medieval Greek gods and whatever. She basically, she was the modern hero version of Conan, and they finally cemented that when they had the Conan Wonder Woman comic done by Aaron Lopresti, who did great, fantastic. I mean, Aaron Lopresti is a powerhouse. But yeah, it was just that total. I mean, she's a warrior. She fights with shield, and so I never thought Wonder Woman completely ever mixed with the other superheroes, because she was never a superhero per se. She was a warrior. Yes. And I always liked that aspect of her. And so there was a lot in her costume design. If you want to go to costume, in the comics, George Perez did a really good sort of workaround of why she had this sort of American cape as a costume, because it never quite made sense. So do you know the story how he reworked her into getting this cape? So it was supposed to be in the comic. There was during World War I or II, I think it might have been II, but correct me. George Perez wrote in that the original Amazons are set on this island to protect. There were all these like evil creatures from the Greek mythology that were trapped under the island, and there was this huge door. And it was supposed to be like the Amazons were there to make sure this door never opened and made sure none of these creatures came out. Well, one time the door got open, and there was a soldier, an American female soldier, pilot, Air Force pilot, crashed on the Themyscira by accident and helped the Amazons close the door. And like she basically helped the Amazons sacrifice herself and like help them close the door and trap all these creatures again. And during that time, it was like they didn't know who she was. They didn't really say anything to her. That this woman just appeared out of nowhere and helped them save this. And the only symbol they found on this warrior pilot was the American flag. So when they started making this sort of, and they revered her as this sort of ultimate warrior lady, even though she wasn't an Amazon because she was so selfless or whatever. And so when they finally gave Wonder Woman a costume, it's like, this costume is based after that famous warrior who helped us, and this is a symbol. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's unique, interesting workaround. And I'm like, okay, that made sense. I didn't really know what it was. They attributed it to this ultimate warrior, which Wonder Woman was supposed to be, and I'm like, okay, that made sense.
Yes. Reason for the Star Spangled Look. I'd like to take a moment to welcome Rory. Welcome, my friend.
Hello, all.
Better late than never. We've been covering costume designs and characters, and we all kind of decided that we absolutely love Captain America, not only because of the character himself, but the suit is enduring no matter how many upgrades and high-tech versions it gets.
Stands the test of time.
Yes, and Aaron surprised me in saying that Cap is his favorite superhero character and Wonder Woman is another favorite.
Yeah, those are my two favorite ones.
I would love to see them in an adventure together, even though
why hasn't that been done?
Cross-platform,
I think that would be really cool.
But I think it would be cool. I really do. I want to take this time though to start to get into Silverline characters, since we covered legacy stuff for the full hour.
Can I throw in a couple of cents for the legacy stuff?
No. You can, as Aaron put together this stuff. I'd love to hear, Rory, your take on favorite legacy costumes. Why? Go.
Yeah. So I've been listening. I agree, on my drive home, I agree with just about everything you guys said. Wolverine, how he would act in that costume, and Nightcrawler, one of my favorites as well. And I wish they would have done the Errol Flynn thing better with that.
Yeah.
And if he had like a squirrel suit, that'd be perfect.
Yeah,
because he could just bamf up somewhere and
I know, right?
Yeah,
like the electromagnet or electrostatic Batman cape just makes it like hang glider,
Right, I did think the way they introduced Nightcrawler in the second X-Men movie showed why he is so lethal. The whole teleportation fighting thing I thought was really cool to see that in motion, because he would just be everywhere at once. I thought that was awesome.
And I love. I never was huge into Daredevil until that show came out, and that was a good show. And I love Nightcrawler and Daredevil for other reasons too, but they're great. The Guyver is one of my all-time favorite costumes.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Because it's like the symbiote, it's a bio
Yeah.
armor.
Yeah,
And
of course.
and that crappy movie from
I know the one. That's what I was
Oh,
introduced
yeah.
to the guy from. I'm like, what's this?
Oh,
Yeah.
It was American made, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But when you're a kid, like when I was a kid, I was obsessed with it. Like, this is freaking awesome. And then they came out with like sequels. I'm like, this is great. And I look back at it now, like rewatching it, it's like the little spike coming out like moves when he walks
Yeah.
because it's not like detach ray. It's just poor budgeting. Yeah, it's so great, and the manga was great too. But that was a good story.
It is. We also covered a little bit about how you've got to have multiple components in terms of you want to imply the power and or mission. You also want a level of reality to it so that it works in our world, and a silhouette graphically that works,
Which is recognizable.
Which perfect setup here.
Could be two schools of thought on it, because you could have Gray Man, like, if I'm a vigilante, do I really want to stand out?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The Gray Man episode, and then I want to be recognizable to strike fear in the hearts of whoever.
Yeah, the bad guys.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm all about functionality, and I think even if your costume accentuates your power or whatever you're good at, it will be cool because you're so good at it. Nobody can top you. You'll become iconic that way, anyways.
Good point. Vic says off topic, but Rob, what are you working on? So we got a curious fan here. Ooh, nice.
Oh, that's good.
Working on Boston Bombers. So
very nice.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to bring that up or
T. Larson.
Brent, welcome, my friend. I love
Hello, Brent.
At the end, and we just really get a power in the last quarter mile, man. We're gonna
second wind.
We have been covering not only legacy characters, why the costumes matter, what's enduring and what's not, and should it change and should it evolve, but we're also talking about the different components of costuming and how they should really imply the mission and or powers of a character. They should work in the real world, and they should also strike a graphic silhouette that's memorable. And I wanted to bring up the Silverline character. If Aaron would be so kind as to share, this is a very early design of Cat and Mouse. That and to go back a little bit, Cat and Mouse was originally released in the late 80s with Earls Comics. Roland Mann created the characters, and they had a certain look to them. So when Roland and I got together in 2016 and decided we wanted to reboot, we talked a lot about how we were going to go with this. And
can you see that? Is it on there or is it
now?
Okay, now it is.
There we go.
Now it is. In the early stages here, this was my very first take on them. We wanted to have something that looked like it could have been put together and purchased from a store, but again, an iconic profile and or silhouette. So I wanted Cat and Mouse to actually, I wanted the cat character, the male character, to have almost a cat-like silhouette. So I worked with putting seams on the hood to almost echo a little bit the cat-shaped head, and also how the hood drapes to give it those sort of fat jowls that a cat has. And I still wasn't quite there with Mouse yet. I still didn't really know what I was going to do, but we were getting there with the sort of assembled young vigilantes, what they could get at the hardware store and at Home Depot and at Academy Sports or wherever.
Couldn't pick up Mickey Mouse ears at a thrift store?
Yeah,
Nope.
probably. Yeah, you could, but then again, people would laugh at you and you wouldn't strike fear. They would just like throw things at you and mock you. So we go on to the next one.
I think
and it gets a little bit.
Is this the next one?
Yes,
Okay.
That's where we go. So we also have a color version of this next, Aaron. So, but in this black and white version, this is what we went with. A little bit more tech, so to speak, or tactical, I should say. I wanted a belt. I wanted boots that you could get at a store. A little bit of the conceit with rolled up sleeves and gloves on both characters. I wanted her attitude to be evident, sort of a punkish girl, both with the haircut. But we went with hoods for both of them here. Face covers on the mask. I decided that the best treatment for the mouse idea would be more of an emblem on a hoodie. So that's what we went with there. The martial arts weapons came in a little bit later, but it gives you an idea of the evolution of the costume from a little bit more fantasy superhero to bring it a little bit more into reality. But again, people wouldn't dress this way, but in a sort of street fighting Teen Titans book in New Orleans, maybe they would.
Yeah.
So we wanted to keep a little bit of a feel there, a fantasy feel, and striking, both implying that these are vigilantes, these are martial artists, but also giving them a little bit of a fantasy profile. Again, with the ears for Cat's hood and the mouse t-shirt, or the mouse hoodie for Mouse. If you want to go to the color piece now.
This is the color piece, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So with the colors, again, this was more like I wanted something where it would look cool. You wouldn't really want to wear something too bright if you were going to be a vigilante. But again, this was something you're getting the behind the scenes looks here. I wanted complementary colors. I wanted some bright accents. I tend to do that with my characters. I've even done it with Silverblade, where I use very bright colors for accents, usually the inside of gloves or the rolled up portion, the inside of a hoodie on the sleeves. Again, the inside of their hoodies is brighter than the outside. Kind of taking a note from Neil Adams's redesign of Robin's cape, where it went from yellow to being black on the outside and yellow on the inside. So that informed a little bit of the design work too. Aaron, did you have any questions or commentary on this? Because I'm just babbling as we go through the design decisions and stuff.
I did like the design. I like the I like the tennis shoes on her.
Good.
And the symbol. I thought it was interesting. She had a mouse symbol, but he did not have a cat symbol. But it kind of makes her character look like she's the one that would wear that.
Yes.
And besides
he doesn't
him,
seem like the Hello Kitty type.
Yeah, like she would. Yeah. So I never, and again with the ninja weapons and stuff, I never, and I have to ask Roland this, whether or not they actually would kill people or not. So I didn't know if they were like, because they would fight with swords and stuff like
traditional ninjutsu stuff.
Yeah, like would they actually kill or whatever, or would they not? But I thought the ninja weapons and stuff were a cool idea.
Well, that came from one of the supporting characters. If you move to the Kung Fu Girl or this character Kunoichi, no matter if you want to pronounce it however, this is their martial arts mentor. This character is aware of the villain who is operating in New Orleans and running the human trafficking, and she's been a nemesis for that character for a long time, and she's sort of brought out of a watchfulness for these two youngsters who want to take on this villainess, and she's of course runs a kung fu school, and she's a ninja herself, so she ends up training them in the ninja way. So what I wanted here was again,
I'd love to see a David Carradine cameo.
Right. The blend for her was again something that looked cool, that informed, that you could recognize from a distance, that gave us the martial artist master idea. So questions, comments, anybody? Aaron, did you like this one? Does this work for you? What do you think?
It does work for me again with like the colors and stuff. I did like. I read the original miniseries. I'm trying to remember where she was in the series. It's been a while, so that could be
right.
I know, and then you had the devil character or whatever that you designed.
Oh, that's coming up. Yeah. Demon coming up.
Demon. Yeah.
Yes. But I wanted your take. Vic says it's Kunoichi. Okay, thank you for correcting us there. We don't want to look silly for our Japanese-speaking fans. But the idea here was to really go simple with her karate gi pants. I just wanted them straight up, but I wanted something.
Those are Chuck Norris action jeans.
Yes, absolutely.
Action jeans, yeah.
Jeans, yes. So you can do the straight up kick.
Can you still buy those? That'd be amazing.
This is a side note, but When I was taking classes back in the day, in the 90s, way before, the internet and everything, in the ancient days,
You were there
we
in the
actually
beginning.
had a student. There was a girl there. The design is kind of based on her, and she could actually do this. A lot of the kids in the class were teenagers, and it was amazing. She could do that straight standing kick and just put her flat foot facing the ceiling. It's just amazing. If you
Okay,
start
now
on
hold
this
that
stuff
pose for 20
early-
minutes while we all draw.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. Sensei would do that. He would make us hold
Whoa.
our kicks, right?
Oh.
Just to build strength. It's like, okay, kick, hold, and we're all like,
Yep.
and all of us guys are like, wobbling.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
legs are barely holding up. And this girl could just go straight up to the ceiling. And so I wanted to do kind of a dedication to the younger folks who get into it in their grade school years and can really do the splits. Okay, move on to the
We
demon
had
character.
to get a boot camp with our rifles.
Is it
We had to
this one
sit.
or which
hold
one?
on.
Yes.
Is it-
Okay. This is
45
design
minutes.
one. This
Okay.
is design one. I think, is that 2 or 1? No, that's 2 actually. That's 2, but it doesn't matter. There's one. Okay. In the early evolution there's a little feel of beast and wolvie that I kind of blended in with the character. The character is a mild-mannered veterinarian who, for reasons that Roland will disclose in his storytelling, looks like this. Very much like, not a Nightcrawler mix with beast. And
The Gambit coat.
Yes, I wanted him to have almost a Wolverine street clothes look. So he was imposing, but that would cover his weird features, like this sort of strange horn-like formations on his head. But Roland said, go a little less with the Wolvie Beast thing and we move on to the next one. And that's the one we ended up going with. This is more true to the original design from the late 80s, what Demon looks like. So comments, observations.
I like the horn more. I think I like the horns more here.
Yes,
Yeah.
Roland likes it better.
I think Roland was right to have that change made.
It's almost crown-like.
I like the other character, but not for Demon.
Right.
Maybe some other character you might create further down the road that
Right.
would fit for.
Right.
And he's red or blue?
I think he's supposed to be red.
He's covered like when the TMNT went out into the street. Right. And when the Ninja Turtles went out into the street. And Big says, Kurtis Mitchell Fujita is a kung fu master and a comic art. Yes, he is, and his book is available out there. Shadow Ghost. We're also going to talk about.
He just started this Kickstarter, didn't he?
He did. We're going to talk about our own Kickstarters here, but I wanted to share those with you guys. Those are right out of my sketchbook for those interested in creating and designing their own characters. Show you how these cat and mouse things got started.
I can show you. Well, I can show you one character that I've done. Now, I don't. Let me see here. I don't design characters. What's the best representation of him? And I'll show you where his. We'll start with this one.
Okay.
Go. Here. So this was a character I'm working on now, and this was my barbarian character.
Oh, this is the Halloween barbarian?
Yeah, his name is Noct, N-O-C-T, which is short for Nocturnal.
Oh, I love it.
And his design is, see if I could even get, I think this is the first page.
Okay. I love the lighting on that page, by the way, Aaron. Props to you on the lighting. Man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. That's
so that was more so his design. When I actually designed him, he was heavily inspired by this character.
Oh, that's from Fire and Ice, Frazetta.
Exactly. Okay, so everybody recognizes it. This is also another image of him. That's why he has the green eyes.
Awesome.
And the sort of like that sort of belt or buckle or something that comes up, like up his chest area.
Very nice.
And then so the hook and the chain was just something because like the hook actually will come out like you saw in the what was this one where it's a chain with a hook that can actually come out of it.
Yes.
I think also it's done here too, a little bit. Well, he has the skull and the hook there, but that was also a motive. But that, I mean, his whole like character design was heavily inspired by this guy. That's where he has the weird mask. And since he's supposed to be based in a world where the world is composed of like Halloween creatures.
Mm-hmm.
My Halloween, I
Mm-hmm.
gave him the orange hair because orange was one of the main colors of Halloween. And so he's just this barbarian. I actually do have a preview of a page. It's one of the first pages
Cool.
from my
Nice.
comic that I'm doing of him. So
That's
yes.
neat that you're showing us the inspiration for him too.
Yeah.
Because you can see the influence there. Really,
of
it
why
really
he's coming.
worked.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I love, and as a kid, when I saw Fire and Ice, I just fell in love with the Dark Wolf character because he was just so cool and so interesting. I remember those eyes. He didn't have pupils, and so I wanted to do that idea, especially. And I did want to make my character's axe look unique. So his axe does have like this sort of crow skull in the back, and the axe is more like. So there is. So yeah, he's just so. I mean, I'm
like a scythe blade turned inward.
Yeah, and so the stories in him are basically very much inspired by Conan. You can read any Conan story out of order,
Mm-hmm.
the all short stories. That's how I'm doing with him. So he will definitely be just in short story format. I mean, I think I have what other ones.
Is this is this going to be a graphic novel, like just one
so
shot?
each issue will be 24 pages. It'll be each issue will be a standalone issue. They
Done
don't,
in one,
they don't
right?
read in any order. You don't have to get one,
fun.
two.
So a done in one, yeah.
Done in
Cool.
one.
That's
So
nice.
anyone can pick up anyone at any time, and they're not connected. There is sort of a history of why he is. You've noticed he's kind of built like Frankenstein a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is a history behind why that is.
Okay. Okay. And you
so-
created is this prehistoric Earth, or is this its own world? Is
Its
this
own world,
unique-
kind of like a fantasy world, but
Good.
it's mostly just I like to draw Halloween type stuff, and so I just to draw monsters and the idea of like this hook and this, and so he's just kind of this survivalist sort of character.
I like it. When's it coming out? What's your timetable on that? Just general. I know it depends on a lot of things.
Mid-spring, hopefully.
Mid-spring?
I'm actually doing the obsoletes at the same time as I'm doing.
Okay.
So I'm doing
know
back
how
and
it
forth.
is. No,
Yeah.
awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. We're gonna touch on a Kickstarter here that we've got coming up. I have a quick question I'm gonna answer from Vic. Says, which Kickstarter is Silverblade gonna start coming out? Thanks for asking that. Silverblade begins production now. I just finished a huge project I've been working on, a commission project that I could not turn down. And I just completed, sent the last design today. So Silverblade begins. The script is done. It's going to be reformatted from a 4-issue to a 1-shot graphic novel. So the page count is coming down. But it's going to be done hopefully by the fall. So everything will be ready. I'll keep you updated. I'll start feeding images and so on and so forth. But Brent, I'm glad you're here because I want you to talk a little bit about, there's a Kickstarter on right now that you can begin following. Go to Kickstarter and look up Silverline, Cape Town, and Friar Rush. Cape Town is by Brent T. Larson, who's with us tonight. Talk to us a little bit about Cape Town and what it's about, Brent.
Sure. Well, Cape Town is a superhero book, and it is basically we're kind of taking the idea that there is an entire city that is full of people who do cosplay and just love to run around and be superheroes and or supervillains, and then something kind of a science accident happened, like they just happen all the time. But anyway, some of them actually got some powers and started being real superheroes. And then suddenly they all disappeared. And that is where our story begins, which is we have a young guy who is going to start being a superhero. He's Recon is his name. And he starts fighting crime in this city, runs into another new superhero called Seismic, and they both realize that they are on the same quest, which is to find out what happened to all of the superheroes. And basically, they start down this search, and they run into a lot of wacky stuff along the way.
And the upcoming
Wackiness ensues.
Wackiness does ensue. In fact, wackiness is about to ensue. I just sent Aaron, if you'd be kind enough to screen share the color art for the cover, one of the covers of Cape Town. This was a fun cover to do, Brent. I got an advanced copy of the book and everything, and it was cool to adapt. I love adapting other people's designs, sort of how I would draw them. So we'll give you an idea.
I can get that bigger.
Let's see if we can. No, that's the size I got it. I'll tell you what I'll do is I will share the actual drawing with you. Let's see. That one. Work.
Yeah.
This will give people an idea of the characters and what they look like. But it's very much urban superhero environment, and it's got some twists and turns. Brent is famous for his twists and turns and scripting. You think it's going to be predictable, but it's not. It's not. It's a surprise. There's the cover. Tell us a little bit about these characters as we're looking at them, Brent.
Sure. I'll add this is we're kickstarting the first of it's a 4-issue series, and up there on top is Recon, and he is a new guy, like I said, new on the scene. This is kind of something I wanted to kind of impress is this is not a dark story. This is in fact kind of a pushback on what I just see is this needless dark angst that just seems the comic world says that if you get powers, you will immediately turn into a terrible person. If you want to be a superhero, it's really because you just want to push people around. I totally disagree with all of this, and everyone who's read comics all their lives should know this is bunk. This is me being nice. It's bunk. People can actually decide to be superheroes for their own reasons, and these reasons are good, and it is genuinely because they want to help people. And so you have these two characters who don't like each other at first, just because a lot of times people don't when they're trying to do the same thing, but they gain a grudging respect for each other. And as I was writing this story, I really felt like, first off, it's a pushback against the dark. But second off, it's also kind of a fun idea to see what would happen if you actually had, and we're probably going to hew closer to the character of Recon here. What would it actually be like if you could be a superhero? I remember when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be Batman when I grew up. And forget about scientists or astronauts; those guys are too pedestrian. I wanted to be a superhero. Now, in this world, you actually can. And so this guy decides he's going to do it. And he's married, and his wife is actually kind of like his handler while he's out fighting crime. I have never seen this done before. I'm sure it has been. Everything has. But I just thought that might be a fun new angle to try. And as far as Seismic goes, he has kind of a supplier, but that is kind of where he is a tortured, scary guy. But we start out basically saying straight out, he is not Batman. His character is totally different, and that right there is one of the first big twists in the story, and so I'm excited for people to read it. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, I can tell you. I love the name, by the way, brilliant name. Cape Town. It doesn't get much more clever than that when you're doing a superhero story. So everybody go to Kickstarter and check out Cape Town #1 and Friar Rush #1 through 3. Sadly, folks, the time has come for us to say goodnight, and we have our own unique way of saying goodnight. How do we say it? We say, make mine.
Mine, Silverline.
Line.
I'm April Hunter. Make mine Silverline.
All right.